Doctor Who's unique format means that its episode quality can be all over the place. This is the show that went from the highs of the Satan Pit to the lows of Love and Monsters and Fear Her, and then all the way back up again for Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, all in the span of just a few weeks. However, occasionally a great episode will come along, followed by another, and maybe even another. It's rare, but not unheard of. The only question is, which of these streaks in the modern series is the best? Now, quick disclaimer before we begin, we're only counting streaks of 3 episodes or more. And that's it, let's get started. I'm Ellie for Who Culture, and these are the 10 best episode runs in Doctor Who history. Number 10, The Halloween Apocalypse to Village of the Angels. Doctor Who always responds to adversity with a plucky go-getter attitude. When faced with a global pandemic, the Chibnall-era production team opted to go bigger, not smaller, and give us the show's first series-long story in over 30 years. And for the most part, the results were really quite good. From the moment the Halloween Apocalypse opens on the Doctor and Yaz suspended upside down on an acid planet, Flux is a rollercoaster ride that doesn't let up. The serialized format opened up some fresh possibilities for the show. A recurring cast of characters, ongoing plot threads, weekly cliffhangers, and it worked so well that you have to wonder why it took so long for the revived era to give it a go. War of the Sontarans and Village of the Angels are widely considered the standouts of the series, serving as terrific showcases for the Sontarans and the Weeping Angels. But kudos must also go to the Halloween Apocalypse for setting everything up so skillfully, and Once Upon Time for being such a unique, trippy chamber piece. And throughout it all, Sam Sproul and Rashenda Sandel are exceptional as new villains Swarm and Azure. Unfortunately, Flux's 2 closing episodes are far less remarkable than what came before, but those first 4 parts don't really drop the ball. Number 9, The Day of the Doctor to Deep Breath. When it came to celebrating Doctor Who's 50th anniversary and writing out the 11th Doctor while introducing the 12th, Stephen Moffat scored an absolute hat-trick. Unlike previous multi-Doctor stories where old Doctors assemble simply for the sake of it, The Day of the Doctor is an introspective character piece, bringing 3 incarnations together for a very specific reason. It not only resolves a plot point from 8 years prior, but sets the show up for the future with a winning turn from John Hurt and a delightful cameo from Tom Baker. Appreciation has grown for the following episode, The Time of the Doctor, over the years as well, and rightly so. The idea of the Doctor dropping everything to protect a town full of strangers is so simple, but so effective, and very, very doctory. And what better way to honour the impact of Matt Smith's raggedy incarnation than by surrounding him with children and children's drawings? It's an emotional, poignant conclusion for an all-timer Doctor. And last but not least, Deep Breath is a tremendous start for the 12th Doctor, with some wonderful scenes between him and Clara as they rebuild their relationship. The feature-length runtime affords much more breathing space, pun intended, than the average Doctor debut, and Capaldi shines as a rougher but no less enigmatic version of the character. It's a fantastic trio of episodes, with some of the most fan-pleasing, gut-wrenching, and dramatic moments in the show. As episode runs go, it doesn't get much more memorable than this. Number 8, Father's Day to the Doctor Dances. Series 1 is regarded by many as one of Doctor Who's best. Hell, if it wasn't for Boomtown and The Long Game, the entire second half of the series could have made it onto this list. Alas, the 2005 revival's first run of consistently great episodes begins with Father's Day, a story that takes the show's rule of historical non-intervention and plays with it to devastating effect. The moment when Pete realizes who Rose is and what he has to do to save her and Jackie is utterly heartbreaking. The emotional consequences of time travel have been explored many times since in stories like The Fires of Pompeii and Demons of the Punjab, but Father's Day did it first, and did it best. Then came the equally groundbreaking The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances. The legacy of this story is hard to overstate. Aside from the fact that it had children chanting, "Are you my mummy?" up and down the country, it was the first outing for both Stephen Moffat and Captain Jack Harkness, and the moment that cemented the Doctor as a romantic hero. Those scenes with Rose where he's talking about dancing walked so that his relationship with Renette, River, and Rogue could run. It's chilling, it's genuinely funny, and it brings out the very best of the Doctor. It's Stephen Moffat in a nutshell. This story also gave us our first mention of Villain Guard, an organisation that continues to be a big part of the Whoniverse almost 20 years later. Number 7, The Power of the Doctor to the Church on Ruby Road. Doctor Who's 60th anniversary was one to remember, not least because it was preceded by the BBC's own centenary. As such, we were treated to 5 landmark stories over a 14-month period. Things kicked off with Jodie Whittaker's swan song, The Power of the Doctor, a story with more returning elements than you can shake a sonic screwdriver at, from Paul I Don't Do Robes McGann to the late great William Russell. The result was a beautiful, if messy, celebration of the show's legacy, where everyone gets the chance to shine. Well, except maybe Dan. Poor Dan. Then came the 60th itself. 3 anniversary specials fronted by David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Though they perhaps didn't do the best job of celebrating the history of Doctor Who, it was a strong run of episodes overall, and there really was something for everyone to enjoy. From the family fun of the Starbeast to the craziness of the Giggle, via the wonderfully eerie horror of Wild Blue Yonder. Finally, the Church on Ruby Road returned the show to Christmas Day with a simple yet heartfelt tale, which perfectly established Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson as the new Doctor and companion. The mysteries around Ruby and Mrs. Flood were tantalising. It was very Christmassy, and we even got a catchy musical number about goblins eating babies. I mean, what's not to love? While this obviously isn't Doctor Who's best ever run, it's undoubtedly its biggest. It'll be a long time before we have 3 or 4 consecutive episodes on this scale. Number 6, The Waters of Mars to the 11th Hour. David Tennant's departure from Doctor Who was a pretty big deal, so much so that the BBC considered ending the show altogether. Fortunately, Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat were there to steer the ship, ensuring that Tennant went out in style and that his replacement landed with a big bang. Doctor's penultimate stories aren't usually that remarkable, but The Waters of Mars is the exception to the rule, combining the tried and tested base under siege format with one of the show's freakiest monsters of all time. However, it's the 10th Doctor's tragic downfall, as he briefly becomes the Time Lord Victorious, that makes it an all-time classic. Then came the finale itself, a story so big it had to be split into 2 parts. The End of Time has everything from the Time Lords and Rassilon to a rabid skeletal master. It raises the stakes higher than ever, only to deliver a brutal and truly shocking final twist. That kindly old Wilf is the unwitting agent of the Doctor's demise. What follows is the strongest debut for a new Doctor we've ever seen. The 11th Hour introduces us to Matt Smith's Time Lord through the eyes of a child, and that instantly endears us to him, while the fairy tale tone is wonderfully evocative and Murray Gold has rarely been better. In retrospect, the BBC had absolutely nothing to worry about when Tennant and Russell T Davies left. This is easily one of the most confident era transitions in Doctor Who history. Number 5, Boom to Rogue. Fan reaction to the opening and closing installments of Ncuti Gatwa's first season was somewhat mixed, but there's no denying that the middle 4 episodes was something special. Anyone left scratching their heads by talking babies and a random musical number was immediately put at ease by Boom. Stephen Moffat's first episode in over 6 years is edge-of-your-seat viewing, with shocks and surprises aplenty, from the debut of upcoming companion Varada Sethu to the death of the current one. The equally compelling 73 Yards takes us from the Welsh coast to an apocalyptic alternate future as Ruby comes to terms with a life of enforced solitude and ultimately uses it to her advantage. It's an unnerving, fascinating story that stays with you long after the credits have rolled. The following week's Dot and Bubble packed more of a punch than anyone expected. What could have been a simple, one-dimensional critique of social media was instead a cautionary tale about limited worldviews and echo chambers, with devastating implications for the Doctor and Ncuti Gatwa's standout acting moment so far. This run was capped off by Rogue, a highly entertaining Doctor romance played out against the backdrop of a sumptuous Regency setting. Jonathan Groff is spellbinding as the titular Time agent, and the climactic scenes of him sacrificing himself to save Ruby were beautifully executed and left you wanting more of the character. Number 4, Human Nature to Utopia. There's no denying that Series 1 and Series 2 have some brilliant standout episodes, but it wasn't until Series 3 that we got a run of 3 consistently great stories. First up was Human Nature and the Family of Blood, which asked the question, what if the Doctor was human? It's an inspired premise, played with to great effect as we watch the Doctor's alter ego John Smith build a life for himself on Earth before it all comes crashing down around him. And the evil family is deliciously creepy, particularly Harry Lloyd as the sneering schoolboy Jeremy Baines. Then came a story that barely featured the Doctor at all. But let's face it, when you've got a lead as compelling as Carey Mulligan and a monster as distinctive as the Weeping Angels, what more do you need? Blink's unconventional format and intricate plotting was a risk, but one that undoubtedly paid off. Horror, thrills, brilliant use of time travel, and some gut-wrenching scenes and dialogue, it's no wonder this one continues to top fan polls. The streak concludes with Utopia, an episode that starts with the return of Captain Jack and ends with the return of the Master. It's a gripping adventure with a foreboding tone throughout, a winning performance from Derek Jacobi, and the mother of all cliffhangers. In a way, there was little point following it with the finale. Series 3 had already peaked. The Sound of Drums and Last of the Time Lords are by no means bad, but the run of truly great episodes undoubtedly ended with Utopia. Number 3, Face the Raven to the Husbands of River Song. The 12th Doctor's era had many highlights, but the ending of his second series is difficult to top. Face the Raven is an unnerving, doom-laden tale, which builds to a tragic yet inevitable climax. The final 10 minutes is one of the best Doctor-companion interactions ever committed to screen, with Capaldi and Coleman saying so much with so little. And then what is there to say about Heaven Sent that hasn't been said already? Putting the Doctor in a castle for an hour and making that the first part of the finale was a massive risk, but the lightning in a bottle combination of Stephen Moffat, Rachel Talalay, and Peter Capaldi rose to the challenge and delivered what is consistently and rightfully voted one of the greatest hours of television in 61 years of Who. The trilogy was brought to a close with Hellbent, which may not have been the Gallifrey-centric epic it was made out to be, but it's all the better for it. In the end, it all comes back to Clara and the Doctor, and for a duo that regularly pushed each other to some dangerous limits, their ending was absolutely perfect. Points must go also to the Husbands of River Song. It's a banger of a festive story, starting off as a simple screwball comedy, but becoming something much more poignant by the end. What's especially impressive about this run of episodes is that it's one long story, with Husbands serving as the epilogue. Mini arcs within Doctor Who don't get much stronger than this one. Number 2, the Pandorica opens to the Day of the Moon. Between 2010 and 2011, Toby Haynes directed 5 consecutive Doctor Who episodes, all of which were penned by Stephen Moffat, and all of which were bloody fantastic. From the exhilarating cameo-filled opening to the affirming ending that ties the whole series together in a neat little bow tie, The Pandorica Opens and The Big Bang is an incredible end to a near-perfect series. The scene of the Doctor at Amelia's bedside never fails to bring a tear to the eye, and the notion of Amy bringing him back through the power of memory is simply beautiful. The high quality continued with the 2010 Christmas special, A Christmas Carol. Dickens' classic tale of redemption was an obvious fit for Moffat's signature timey-wimey style, and the results were just as rewarding as you'd expect. There are plenty of smart twists, like the identities of the 3 ghosts, and Michael Gambon and Katherine Jenkins are outstanding as Kazran and Abigail. To top it all off, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon is a truly epic start to Series 6. Boasting some breathtaking American location work, an instantly iconic new monster, and an almighty hook in the form of the Doctor's death. The zippy dialogue between the ponds, River, and the Doctor is also something special here. Has there ever been a more quotable Doctor Who story? I don't think so. Having a great series finale, a great Christmas special, and a great series opener all in a row is no mean feat. Moffat and Haynes were on fire here. This is Doctor Who at the top of its game. Number 1, Silence in the Library to Journey's End. On broadcast, Series 4 contained a week's break after The Unicorn and the Wasp to accommodate Eurovision. To tide fans over, a special mid-series trailer was created, which is in itself one of the most exciting Doctor Who things ever televised. From Wilf worrying about the stars going out to Sky Silvestri cowering in terror to glimpses of Rose, the Daleks and Davros, it's spine-tingling stuff. And when those episodes finally arrive, they don't disappoint. Indeed, so great is the second half of Series 4 that it's all made it onto this list. This is some of the show's most ambitious storytelling, taking us from a planet-sized library to a giant Dalek flagship via a stranded shuttle bus and a nightmarish alternate reality. There are scares in the form of the skull-faced Vashta Narada, the horrifically corrupted Miss Evangelista, and the all-mysterious Midnight Entity. There are thrills via the epic Torchwood Sarah Jane Adventures crossover, the long-awaited return of Rose, and the jaw-dropping cliffhanger to the Stolen Earth. And there's heartbreak. break, through the tragic fates of River, Donna, and the Doctor, who once again ends up alone in the TARDIS. To go a couple of weeks without a dud is one thing, but 6 weeks of bangers? Russell T Davies and the team were really cooking here, and it's hard to imagine we'll ever see a streak this good ever again. And that concludes our list, but I'd like to hear what your favourite streaks are. Let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.